Ahoy ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the Deck Tales podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catlin, and this is the show where we set sail into the captivating world of ship life. Most of the time, delving into the best and worst experiences of the incredible crew members who called the open sea their workplace, but I'm open to the odd exception as well. Whether we're navigating stunning destinations to weathering unexpected storms, our guests all have stories to tell that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed an unexpected tear. So if you're a seasoned cruiser eagerly awaiting your next embarkation, or just curious as to what goes on at sea, Deck Tales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Miss Krista Thomas, a former front desk and guest relations manager with around 6 years worth of experience. Krista now works on the ferries over in Vancouver, and we connected through Facebook group The Crew Bar, where she does some admin work on the side to help keep the page operational. As well as this, Krista also has been working on another page called crewscritics, which is specifically for crew members to ask questions that might be a bit more delicate. The following episode does contain some sensitive subject matter, and listener discretion is advised. So, with that in mind, let's anchor up and have a little listen. Testing.
Yep, here we go.
Hello, Krista.
Hello.
How
Sam,
are you?
how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, my dear.
Wonderful.
Krista, just to say, if I end up yawning in the middle of this, please don't think
I know you've had a crazy day.
Please don't think that I'm bored of you and your story is nothing new. Yeah, it's been a very long day. Hey, so you know what? In the past, when I've been like, oh, what backdrop shall I use for today's show? I'm sometimes influenced on temperature. So if it's really cold outside, I'll put something that looks a bit hot just to try to like trick my mind that I'm actually quite warm. And if it's really, really hot outside,
Right.
I'll put something on in the background that's quite cool, like some raindrops on glass or something, just to make me feel like the temperature's a little bit less. Because obviously I'm recording, so I have to close the window and turn off the fan just so that I get a nice, level to edit later. In the case of today, I'm neither hot nor cold, but I am a little bit tired. So I put on my craziest background and I wore a crazy shirt just to try to, trick my mind that I'm actually about to go party.
I love it.
Yeah. And
I love it. It looks fantastic.
I think it's doing the trick. So how are you, Krista? Have you had a long day as well? Or is it just, no, it's just starting for you.
Not as long as you.
Yes.
Yeah. My days, we're 8 hours apart here. So I'm at home today. I'm taking it easy.
Yeah, that's me tomorrow.
Good. You need a break.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had a few wild days.
Well, yesterday was a break in the sense of like I got booked to do some last minute stand-in work for some filming on a thing called The Diplomat on Netflix. And it was just stand-in, but oddly it was 1 day of stand-in, which is like fine by me. They're paying regardless. But normally an actor, whoever it might be, they're obviously on a production for however many months. And when the crew are setting up the shot with the camera and the lighting and everything else, they don't need the actor, but they need a stand-in, someone who's the same height, build, wearing the same color scheme, just to try to get the shot, set up. And then when they're happy, they'll call the actor in and they'll go for a take. But yesterday, the guy that I was standing in for was in like every rehearsal, so I wasn't even needed. And I was just sat in this big country, like, with chandelier type, house and oil paintings on this big cushy sofa, just giving my back a rest.
Oh, okay. Well, you could just get a bit of a break then.
I did. I really did. I won the lottery yesterday. In terms of like the workload, those days don't come around very often. So
no, being on set's crazy. I managed a hotel that we shut down and turned into a film studio for 2 years during COVID.
Really?
And because we couldn't use it for anything else, and people weren't coming, and we had closed it down to rebrand it, and that whole project got put on hold, so it was sitting empty. And so we just thought, oh, we'll reach out to film and see if they want to use it, because it was a really unique hotel with this atrium, with this big pool in the middle and cave like rocks all throughout the outside of the pool, big sky roof. And so, yeah, a lot of Netflix shows ended up coming through and filming. And I was on set the whole time throughout that, managing this hotel, but for actors instead. And so I learned a lot about the industry at that time as well. And there were some long, long days, though. I mean, we had to be there if they were there. So there were times I think we worked 26 hours. So it was like,
yeah. But so what kind of shows did you have? Or you can't say.
Riverdale, The Stand on Stephen King, The Stand from Amazon, Batwoman.
Yeah. So they didn't ask you to play her?
But no, funny enough. No lead parts.
Well, there was Alicia Silverstone. She was in the George Clooney version with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jim Carrey, and no, not Jim Carrey. No, not even Arnold Schwarzenegger. Who was in that one?
Yeah, that was, I guess, the movie.
Chris O'Connell was the Robin. It was Batman Returns, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we are getting very sidetracked by talking about movies, and we've got
Very sidetracked.
Well, yeah, but so where are you calling from today?
Vancouver, British Columbia.
Vancouver. Oh, very nice. I heard it's very clean there.
It is a clean city. It is. We take good care of it.
So, Krista, let's get into it. Let's get into your your deck tales.
Yes.
I mean, you've been out of the industry for some time.
Long time.
How many years has it been?
I left in 2009.
Oh, a year before me.
A year before you? Yeah.
And how many years did you do?
I was there from 2004. It was almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years. It? And was that quite consistent, like back-to-back contracts?
You know what? 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. I left in 2009 and I did back-to-back contracts and I did extensions religiously. I was always the one that was willing to extend my contract. I never wanted to come home. So I was out there for a pretty long time.
Mm. And was there a position that you held consistently, or were you chopping and changing departments?
No, I started as a receptionist and I was only receptionist for a couple of months. And then they promoted me to the group service coordinator is what it was called at the time. And that position took care of all the weddings and the groups, the charters that came on board. And then from there, I went to assistant front office manager and then front office manager, or guest services manager, as they call it today. And that's where I finished. Yeah. And I went and did some ship openings, which was really fun to be able to do, bring them out of the yard in Germany.
When you say ship openings, you don't mean like the ship christening?
Well, yes, but even before that. So I would go there before the ship even was finished being built. And it was still in the yard. And we would go on board and start training the staff and getting everything ready for the maiden voyage. And then I would be there for the christening and the maiden voyage.
Oh, okay. How many christenings did you see?
2.
And did both times the bottle break when it hit the ship?
You know what? I didn't see that part. I was inside probably dealing with a lineup of a million guests. It felt like a million. When you stare at the front, out from the front desk, it always feels like a million guests.
Well, you'd think when they were doing that everyone would be outside watching. But no.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think, but there's always a lineup at the front desk, especially when the ship is leaving.
Yeah.
I was the most naive person, I think, that ever joined a cruise ship. As I stepped onto one, I wouldn't have known any different.
You're looking at the competition for the most naive. What age were you when you stepped on board your first ship?
21.
21. I got you beat. I was 19.
Oh, okay. So you weren't allowed to drink alcohol.
Oh yeah. No, because it was an English ship.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but then on what was it? The Silver Cloud, which is a Silver Sea ship. The drinking rules were 21, and I was 20 at the time. But my job was like social host, and I was hosting cocktail mixers and this and that. And I had a bit of an argument with the hotel manager. Didn't like me. My cabin mate
Mhm.
was a 42-year-old Indian sommelier called Norman, and he was an alcoholic. So our cabin fridge was just full of beer from the slop chest.
Right.
And he was like, if I find the hotel manager was like, if I find any alcohol in your cabin, I'm gonna confiscate it. And I was like, well, it's Norman's, you know. I just played that card every time.
Right.
I said he's got a problem. It's nothing to do with me.
It's always Norman.
Always Norman. Yeah. But so you joined at the drinking age.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Well, the drinking age at home in Canada is 19,
Oh, is it?
but
Yeah.
I joined at the drinking age for the ships that I was going to.
Right. But so you did, sorry, 6 years as basically a front desk operative of many hats. Was there a biggest and a smallest ship that you worked on? Like in terms of scale, how many passengers, biggest to smallest?
Yeah, the Pearl and the Gem were much bigger than the Majesty, which was the smallest ship I ever worked on. And I think, I mean, now they have much bigger ships than even the Pearl and the Gem. I think that they were, I can't remember exactly, but I think that they were around 2 to 3,000 guests, whereas the Majesty was 900.
900.
So that was the smallest ship that I ever worked on.
I saw an image just the other day and I shared it on my Instagram. It was a picture of the Icon of the Seas alongside another Royal Caribbean ship. And it said, I can't remember what the name of the ship was because I posted it, but it was basically saying like it's only 79% bigger on ton mass. And it's just like they're incomparable. So like yeah, with that, like, did you ever think, oh, I'd love to work on one of those big ships with over 7,000 passengers, or could you not even?
No, I never wanted it.
No need.
Never aspired.
So yeah,
Yeah,
3,000 processing and disembarking 3,000 guests a week. It's no easy feat. It's quite a task. So out of the ships you went on, did you have a standout favorite?
the favorite was the Pearl, I believe, because I think that was the one that had the bowling alley on it. And so that was kind of the first exciting thing that there was to do that was different on board. And now they have go-karts and everything else, roller
Yeah.
coasters. But bowling was fun for us to get drunk and go and bowl. So yeah, I loved the Pearl. And it
Was
was the first ship that I took out from the yard. So
oh, special, very magical.
attachment, yeah.
What? How did you play bowling at sea, like when the ship was moving?
I don't know. How do we walk around drunk at sea? We all learned how to do it.
This is true, but like you can't really play bowling when the ship is swaying. It seems so redundant.
Well, maybe you don't notice when you're drinking.
It balances out. Did you play with the
I
bumpers up, or were you a consummate professional? Bumpers
I
down.
got pretty good.
Yeah.
I got pretty good. Yeah,
What- What's your
bumpers down.
what's your high score?
I don't remember my score. I just remember I got good at hitting the pins and they went down.
So did you ever break 100? Did you break a century?
Oh, for sure I did.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's
Yeah.
admirable. With the bumpers down as well, pretty damn good. What did you do to pass the time when you weren't working, other than drink and play bowling?
I was fortunate enough to get a lot of port time with my positions because my positions were very independent or they offset with one other person. So as a group service coordinator, I was the only one and I could just kind of plan my time around my groups and my weddings. And then as assistant front office manager, I would just take turns with the other front office manager.
Mm.
So I was quite fortunate to get port time. And so that's where I spend my spare time.
So you must have gone on quite a few excursions in your 6 years.
I did. I tried not to take advantage of it per se, but in Alaska, I feel like I did quite a few. And then there was some times in Mexico where it just felt like bungee jumping. You went bungee jumping, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing too hardcore. Just a little bit of bungee jumping on the side.
Right.
I think that's one thing I don't know if I could do. I
I didn't think I could do it either.
I saw some
And I
guys that
and I never will do it again. But I'm glad I did it, I guess.
just checked off the bucket list. When did you do it? What year?
2008 in Acapulco.
Oh, and now 2008. Back then, I don't know when they introduced the full body suit harness. It used to be that they just tie that thing around your shins and then you'd
Yeah.
go. But now it's a full body harness, so you're a lot more secure. Did you have just the shin
I
strap?
just had the shins. I just remember the water below me and flopping like a fish when I got down there. My body just going like this because I didn't dive. I just kind of stepped off because I was just so terrified. And they just kept telling me there was just no way down except for one.
But so you step off and then you just like plummet straight down, and
And
then
then your
as
body just kind of like a bit of whiplash there.
yeah, so you're
But I was
better.
okay. I mean, or the tequila had helped to ensure that there was no pain.
Yeah. Oh wow, that was one of your standouts for the excursions. Then was
It
that
was.
was you on excursions as a tour escort sometimes, taking like the guests
I
away?
didn't actually.
Yeah.
No, I was probably a little too busy to commit to something like that where I could be gone that long. My days were more like I could pop out for a little while and yeah.
Couple hours here, couple
Could I
hours there.
couldn't yeah, and just kind of I couldn't necessarily plan ahead and say that I could commit to doing that. It was more on the day of that I could decide if I could go out and for how long.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can understand that. Only time I got a full day off was the day I turned 21. And me and my team of entertainment hosts, we obviously never all got to go off and do anything together outside of work.
Right.
And so I think on that day we were in Civitavecchia and we all went to Rome for my birthday, my whole team, and all the dancers and singers in the show team basically covered all of our duties for the day. So we got a really nice
Nice.
chance to go around and see everything. But yeah, literally that, as you say, is kind of the case. You don't really have many hours in a day to go off because if you go too far, then you're going to have a trouble getting back, and then you're going to be late for something, and you run the risk of being stuck in traffic on a bus or whatever can go wrong. And well, yeah, did you ever miss the ship?
No,
No,
never. I don't even think I really ever came close.
no,
My job was too closely linked to dealing with the people that, when they miss the ship, what happens? And
yeah.
so I had to be there.
It would have been pretty awful if the person responsible for getting the head count is missing.
Right. Yeah.
Was there a standout besides the bungee scariest moment?
Yeah. I remember on board when I had a few weddings in Seattle. And I was going down to bring them up one by one onto the ship. And this passenger kept approaching me. And I knew something was off with him, like immediately. And he kept asking me when the cruise bingo giveaway was. And I told him to go, once he got on board, he would be able to check with the cruise staff. And once I came back down to pick up the second wedding party, same question. And then third time, same question. But I thought, okay, maybe something's a little off, but we can work with this. We'll deal with it when we get on board. And then I came up and I went to the front desk. And back then, Americans could still travel with just their birth certificate and their driver's license. They didn't have to have passports, depending on the itinerary
Mm,
anyway. And so he only had a driver's license on file and not a passport. And he didn't really look like it. And he certainly did not seem like he was, in his 30s. He looked much older. So I went to security and I told them that something was off about this guy. And a few minutes later, this woman comes up to the desk and she says, "There's a man in my room that I don't know." And I look
okay.
at the reservation and it's this man. And I look back at all the notes and it looks like he's supposed to be in the room. The other man in the room has added him to the reservation as his brother. And so I just find this woman another room for the time being. And the man comes back up to the desk and says to me, please don't give that woman her own room. Otherwise, my brother won't spend any time with me on this cruise. And I was just like, sorry, I've got to, just kind of step away. And a few days later, all of a sudden, we get a 911 call at the desk, and there's blood streaked down the hall, like hand streaks of blood all the way down the hall. The room is trashed, and this man has bitten off the ear and part of the cheek of the brother in the cabin, and there's drugs all over the room. I think we had left Colombia or something. So yeah, that was definitely one of the scariest things I think I've seen on board.
Jesus Christ. I've not heard anything like that before. Was the drugs from Colombia? Did he smuggle stuff on board?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then FBI came on in Miami and arrested everybody and said that the guy was wanted for like 15 counts of fraud or something. And no surprise. But
wow. So what, did he get arrested and go to jail, I'm guessing?
He went in the ship jail until we got back to Miami. The brother the older man was helicopter evacuated off with his ear on ice so that they could try to save it. And the woman stayed on board in her cabin. Yeah.
Oh, crikey. So she got her own cabin in the end after all.
She got her own cabin, but I don't know what happened to her when FBI showed up. I think she was arrested as well.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Did you meet any celebrities on board during your time?
No, it was super exciting, but there was Rosie O'Donnell, who was somewhat popular at the time to some people. I think she was more well known for the controversy that her ship charter brought because NASA wouldn't let them into the port because they were so homophobic. And this is so many years ago.
Wait, so Nassau in the Bahamas wouldn't let Rosie O'Donnell's charter into dock because they are homophobic?
Yes, because she had her charter and I'm pretty sure it was NASA. I think we had trouble in other ports as well, but she was not friendly to deal with.
Rosie O'Donnell was famously gay, right? She's a lesbian.
Yes.
So was the whole charter like full of gay friends or?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a charter being refused based on
This was so many years ago though. I mean, and even the Caribbean, it's coming along, but look at how bad Jamaica used to be for things like that, right?
I guess so. Do you know what? I didn't even think about it like that because obviously, have you ever seen that film with Cuba Gooding Jr., who obviously is cancelled now, but it was called, was it Boat Trip?
Oh yeah, right. Boat Trip. I did see it a long time ago.
Yeah. And it was before I went on the cruise ships, but yeah, he goes on a ship and it's like a gay cruise or I can't remember. He pretends to be gay or something.
Oh, I don't remember.
I
don't remember at all. But yeah, her and John Legend are kind of the only two that come to mind. I've probably met more celebrities back at home than I've ever met on board.
Yeah, but it's just an anomaly to see a celebrity at sea because it's like, why would you want to surround yourself with people that you can't escape from? You're sort of famous.
Right. Back then, I know now that they're doing more. I see like Pitbull is, their godfather on one of the ships and they have a little bit more entertainment, but yeah.
Pitbull the music artist.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So what, John Legend, he was on to perform? I'm guessing he wasn't just coming on to play bingo and play bowling.
Actually, he had a small performance on board, and then his wife came and met him on board, and they just sailed for a couple of days and got off early. They didn't even do the entire cruise.
Yeah. Well, how long would it take to get bored of everyone if they're all like, "Oh my God, can I get your autograph?" And it's like, I just want to enjoy myself. Like, no, 100%. If I was famous and I was getting stopped everywhere on a ship, and you couldn't escape that. That's like hell on earth. You'd want to go off
It's
the
the
beaten
last
track.
place I would want to be.
Yeah. Have you ever cruised as a paying customer?
I have, yeah, a
How
couple
was
of
that?
times.
Oh, you have. So
I just don't enjoy it. I
so
want to
what?
be a crew member again.
So working in the industry hasn't soured your experience of wanting to go on a cruise ship, but in some ways you kind of feel a bit limited as to what you can and can't do.
Yeah, I just feel like I don't want to be stuck up there with the passengers and trying to move my way around them. And I'm just jealous that the crew are down at the crew bar.
You feel like one of the sheeple.
Yeah, yeah. And you just keep sitting there thinking, like you're looking around, thinking, oh, you know how to do that. You want to step in, you want to get your hands in there, and you know you can't. You also know that you're canceled. Like I'm
Yeah.
canceled. Nobody cares what I know or how long ago I worked there when I cruised. Only a few people remembered me.
Oh, really? Yeah. When stuff's not getting dealt with, it's like, you call this crowd management? I'll show you. And then you want to step in. I remember when the Silver Cloud came into dock by chance. I was passing, it was in the Thames in London. And I was like, oh, I've worked on that ship. And I was just, out and about. I can't remember what I was doing, why I was there, but I had the audacity to go up to the gangplank and speak to the security guard and say, excuse me, I was just wondering if I could come on board and see which crew members were around. I used to work on
It's
here.
okay.
Yeah, but he was like, no.
No, it's okay to ask, but I mean, you need advance notice. I know that from having
Yeah.
worked in the positions I worked in, because you need to have that clearance ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's okay to go and ask.
Yeah. It was a fool's dream, I think. It was a really nice ship. It had the best food and the best itinerary. I didn't have to do much work because it was a very different type of entertainment that I was asked to provide. So it was more just kind of like going on tours with people and excursions. So that one was probably one of my favorites, just because of the variety of places and excursions that I got to go on. And I also got a $50 tip one time for looking
Ooh,
after
nice.
a Mexican family's son who was a teenager. He was like the only teenager on board, and he was coming to every single one of my events whenever we'd be at sea. And yeah, just looking out for him, really.
My biggest tip was $1,000
Jeez
at the
Louise.
end of a week with one of my groups. My groups would sometimes pool together and give tips. So that was kind of a good job to have.
Yeah. So back when you were starting up, when you were joining the ships, did you have to do all that training beforehand, or was that not something that you needed to do back then?
No, there was no training. I was so surprised the way that I was recruited. I remember that I emailed a newspaper ad that said cruise ship hiring, email jobship@shaw.ca. And I sent my resume in there, and a few months later, I got a call. And this guy said, can you come down today to the office in Vancouver? So I left my job and went to this interview. And me and this other girl were there, and he maybe asked us 10 questions and then said, perfect, go do this, go get your passport, go get your police record check done, and you leave on Sunday. And then it was 4 days notice. And then when I got on board, it was literally like, hey, you're here, here's your room, and come and see the safety manager at 10 o'clock for your training, and then come to the front desk. And we had this one training about general safety. And then we went to the front desk and just literally were just standing there, and they're just kind of telling us stuff as they do it. And it was just on the job training.
Was one of the questions out of the 10 questions I asked you, can you swim?
No, you know what he honestly did say? He did say it's like Melrose Place on Water, which was a soap opera,
Yeah.
right? Back then. And then he said, and don't fall in love. That's the advice I have for you.
Well, so that sets us up quite nicely to segue into the romantic side of cruising. Were there any forbidden relationships?
I guess for me, I was in a forbidden relationship, but I told you I was the most naive person that ever joined cruise ship. So I didn't know I was in a forbidden relationship for a very long time.
Well, how
He
forbidden?
he managed to trick me into, I guess, two contracts. We were together and we went on vacation and stayed at his sister's house with his mother, who flew in to visit as well. And
When
while we were staying at the house, his wife called to say that her dad had died. And this is how I found out that he was a married man.
oh my gosh, after 2 years or two contracts together.
Two contracts, yeah. So that's my forbidden love story. I'm sure, not a big fan of hers.
Well, how long was they
No,
married?
he apparently got married in between the two contracts. He went home and got married.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
But so they'd been courting prior to that first contract for how?
Yeah. Well, I did know that he had a child with her, but he had said that, that was it and that they had been apart for several years.
Yeah.
And the child was 5 years old at the time. So yeah.
Was that your final contract?
No, that was my first contract.
Oh,
First
right.
and second.
Yeah. First and second. Yeah, the naivety thing. Yeah. Okay. So did you learn your
Yeah.
lesson?
Yeah, I came back with a vengeance.
Oh, yeah.
If they can do it, I can too.
So you got married to somebody else whilst you were in the middle of a contract?
No, oh no, I didn't do that. I just came back and just made sure that I was single and available and ready to have fun at all times. But no, I never did the married or the affair thing again. I did end up marrying someone from the ships.
Hmm. Well, just before you do that, because you know what, you just triggered a memory in my brain about naivety. I didn't know how to read women and their advances or anything like that. And there was well, it was actually Rachel who I spoke to on, I think it was episode 9 or 10.
Yeah, saw
Yeah.
that.
She was like a fan of mine, shall we say, and I didn't
Mm,
clock it. I didn't pick up on those signals. And I got back to my cabin and everyone had like whiteboards stuck against their door. And it had someone had
right.
scribbled on it, Sam, for fuck's sake, call Rachel. And her number was put underneath. So it was written by somebody else down our corridor because she was she was a singer and my cabin was with all the other dancers. So she was on the other side
Right.
of the ship or something. So yeah,
So you finally got the hint.
finally, yeah. Going back to you though,
Good one.
with so you got married to somebody on the ships, and that was based off of what, closeness from departments, or you just grew to like each other over several years? How did that?
Yeah, we worked fairly close together when I was doing the group services position,
Hmm.
but I wasn't in that for very long. So I think it was more just being on the same contracts. And even when we weren't, we kept in touch and I went and visited on vacation and he came and visited on vacation and we just pursued.
You were doing the long distance for how long?
We did long distance after ships for 2 years.
Hmm. After ships, so what, you'd finished them or he'd finished them or both of you'd finished them?
Both of us had finished.
Oh, okay. Well, so
But yeah, no, we did long distance for 2 years, and then he was able to immigrate here after the years of lots of paperwork, and he was able to get his visa to the US. So he would actually fly over and get as close to the border in the US as he could, and then I would drive over the border. We were basically living at a Best Western hotel and basically just hunkered down there until his paperwork went through so that we could be together because Canada was taking so long to process everything.
mm.
And yeah, eventually everything went through, but I had some crazy times at the border with them questioning me why I was driving across every day, especially to go and see my Jamaican husband. And my car was searched constantly. And eventually they got used to seeing me and they kind of waved me through. But
Yeah. So how did it all,
yeah.
well, did it all come to an end at some point?
It did all come to an end eventually. He did not like the country. Like culturally, he never did adapt here. Too cold, didn't like the food, just constantly missing home. And it's just like, I would say depression. Yeah, and just he was just unhappy. It's like he was there, but he was never there, you know?
And so charter cruises, you mentioned the Rosie O'Donnell lesbian cruise, or was it gay, not just lesbian?
Yeah. I don't remember much about that one, to be honest. I think the best charter cruises that I did some jazz charter cruises where they had some jazz musicians come on, and I imagine they were quite well known in the musical industry and respected. The musicians would just love when they came on board. I wasn't super into jazz, but it was really nice. Like the event, it was nice. The guests were very nice. It was quite an eloquent charter.
Mm.
Um, and then I've done some of the Atlantis. I think I did one of the Atlantis charters. And so those are
Oh, yeah,
wild.
well, hold the
Yeah.
thought. How'd you go on an Atlantis charter? What I'm trying to.
I believe it was the Atlantis charter. Am I wrong? It was all, people of the different walks of life, gay, lesbian. And I
Right,
remember that I had this one group is they because they hadn't fully charted the ship when they were on board. They had most of it, but not all of it. And so they had the nightclub booked for themselves. And all of a sudden, this man shows up with like 12 people of his group and tries to sneak them in. And he had sold these 12 people as if they were part of the charter, but when in fact they were not part of it at all. And so these guys didn't want them in and they were arguing, and I had to be the middleman that went and made sure that these guys all week I had to chase them around to make sure that they didn't get into any of the events. And of course, these other 12 people were just absolutely pissed off that they couldn't get into the events. And I think it was Atlantis. If not, it was something very similar to it. I know they ran around without clothes on a lot of the time. And
okay, so well, is that because these are people from Atlantis and they don't wear normal clothes like the rest of us humans?
no, I thought that's what the charter was actually called.
That was the stupidest dad joke I've
But
ever come
now
up with.
you've got me questioning what you've got me questioning. Now you've got me questioning it.
I was going to say
It's
that's
something else.
Atlantis is where Aquaman is from.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And obviously they can breathe
No,
underwater.
then
Yeah. As I said, it was a stupid
yeah,
dad joke.
no. Now you got. I know you're thinking of the joke, and I'm thinking of the group name now. But maybe I'm wrong. I think it was Aquafest. Now that I think about it,
Oh wow.
I don't know.
Was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. It
Hmm,
was a lot of people without clothes running around.
fair enough. Was there a favorite or a least favorite destination that stands out for you over the years?
I liked every destination because I truly learned to immerse myself in the culture. I made friends everywhere. I made friends with the taxi drivers and then went and had lunch at their houses. Like in Roatan, I remember being friends with the first taxi driver I ever met and continuing to be friends with her throughout the whole time. We went back and forth there, and she had the bare minimum in her house, and it taught me so much to just see sometimes how happy some people can be with so little, and then think about how I lived my life with wanting more and more. So almost every port, especially throughout the Caribbean, taught me things like that. And then in the other parts where the culture was a bit richer and it wasn't necessarily poverty stricken, then of course you find other interests that you didn't have before. And
Mm,
so I can't say that there was a bad port of call.
no, no. Yeah, well, some of them were a bit lacking in what they had to offer because it was like the stop to get to the place that you were going to visit. So they were a bit run down at times, but by no means did they ever kind of
Yeah.
leap out as being
Having
bad.
yeah, just having to tender and things like that is always challenging.
Did you um did you have any really bad storms?
We did when we were coming across after we brought the gem out of the yard. It was like 3 days of really bad waves, and it was a ghost ship. Like the guests were just in their rooms calling for crackers and ginger ale, and
That old wives' tale.
right, and computers were just down on the floor. Accounting, I remember being down on the floor with their computers and all their receipts and just like laying on the floor trying to get their work done. Yeah.
Sick bags tucked in every crevice.
Yeah. Yeah. Everywhere.
Yeah, it's a sign of obviously that you're going through rough seas. Did you have any significant injuries on any of the ships or nothing at all?
Other than the story I told you, no, I wouldn't say any injuries. I had a lot of people die,
Oh,
but
what? How many?
yeah. Oh, too many to remember.
Right.
Because I was in charge of the disembarkation and like the customs, the person who did this work reported to me. I was always involved in the deaths. And I remember during one cruise, we were just having we had a terrible COVID or not COVID, everything's COVID now, Norwalk outbreak. And
What outbreak?
Norwalk, norovirus.
Norwalk.
Yeah.
How,
So
how you spell that?
Norwalk is Norwalk or Noro.
Yeah, I've
And
heard of
that's
it.
the bug.
Yeah,
Yeah, that spreads.
gastrointestinal.
Yes, it's or GI. They used to call it GI sometimes on the ships.
Yeah. I've heard of that happening. Go on.
Yeah, really, really sick people get really sick, and so we had people dying there. And Alaska is always, it's elderly guests all the time, so there's always a lot of deaths there. People would die on tour sometimes. They would drown. And those phone calls were just the worst to have to make back to people at home.
Oh yeah.
And or if they would have family that would still be left on the ship, and then they would be in my office, and I would just be thinking like, what do I do with this person for the next few days? Like, you give them the spa access, and you just make them as comfortable as you can, but they
Yeah.
they end up coming back to you because you're the person they've met through this process, and they just keep coming back to you, and you just kind of learn how to comfort different people from different cultures of different belief systems, because you have no choice, because so many people die on these cruise ships. It happens so much more than people realize.
Yeah. Was yeah. Well, so you literally were the person that would comfort them so they became attached to you by osmosis. Like they wouldn't know what to do with themselves, so they kept finding themselves coming back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually suggested to the cruise line that they needed to provide some sort of system back to us in return when those things happened, like a calling card or an internet card, because you get back to your room and your mind would just race like, well, I'm so far away from home. What if this happened to my family and I couldn't get home in time? Or what if something happens to me out here?
Mm.
And your mind would suddenly just race and race and race, and you'd want to call home, but how much is it to call home? It's like $50 a minute.
Yeah.
So ended up putting something in place. And when my boss came to Vancouver a few years after I'd left the ships, she came and presented the SOP to me and showed me that they put something into place. I don't know how effective it is, but I'm glad they did something.
Well, it had to get better than it was because obviously for a long time it was shit.
It's draining. It's very emotionally draining. Yeah.
So did you have anything happen whilst you was away back home with family and stuff? Or luckily not.
Luckily, no. Well, that's not true, actually. My mom went through breast cancer while I was away. And
That's got to be
for the
tough.
most part, yeah, for the most part, I went back home to be with her for a short period of time. And
Mm.
then for the most part, I was actually at sea because she wanted me to be there. She felt like me being at home sitting around was actually worse. It made her feel sick.
Mm.
whereas if I went and lived my life the way I had been, it kind of made her feel more like everything was normal and she had more strength to push through, and she overcame it and she's still with me today. So
That's good. That's good.
we go through the motions so much on board that it's just there really isn't time to process a lot of the things that we're feeling. And it's almost good it's designed that way, because I don't know if we would get through a lot of the things that happen on board if we weren't.
Well, yeah, emotional resilience is something that you just kind of learn to help you get through the day. Just you need it, otherwise you're never gonna be able to stand in front of all those people. Every day you're dealing with so many people, and all their problems are your problem. So you just gotta get on with it. But yeah. But so anyway, let's hear. Do you have a most embarrassing moment that you're willing to tell us about, Krista?
I think the most embarrassing is that I was trying to dance. And I think I wasn't even trying to dance. I think I was like trying to make this big kind of grand entrance to everybody around the bar. Very, very like, look at me, hey, I'm here. And then wiped out completely, like flat onto my back, right at the bar in Crew Bar while it was super, super busy. So yeah.
What do you mean wiped out? Like someone knocked you over?
No, it just slipped. My heels went out from underneath me and it just went backwards.
I've seen that happen to a lot of guests on the dance floor at sea. Was it particularly rough, or were you particularly drunk?
There was no roughness and I wasn't even drunk. I think I was just wearing shoes that weren't appropriate and just yeah.
Happens to the best of us. One of the worst things I did was it wasn't even at sea. I went out with some colleagues for some work drinks, and I ended up thinking I could do the worm.
Oh,
And
nice.
the worm, I could do it at one point, but on this occasion, the dance floor had beer all over it or something. And as I went to do it, my hands splayed out, and I hit the deck, bust my chin,
Ouch.
bust my chin open, and I had to get stitches. But because I'd
Oh.
had quite a lot to drink, I'd stayed out with my colleagues, and like the bar basically just gave me some tape to do a cross section. And I think I called my mum at like 3 in the morning or something stupid. I was like, "Oh, yeah, mum, good night." But I did something to my chin, and she says, "What'd you do, Sam?" So I told her. She was like, "Go to hospital now." It was on. It
Oh.
was gaping. It wasn't even small. It was bigger than my thumbnail.
No, well, if you needed just 7 stitches, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
I thought, no, it'd be okay. She was like, "No, Sam, go to hospital." But so that's why I normally keep a beard, because I've got a
So you
scar.
got some more wounds underneath, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Worm wounds.
Worm wound. Did you have any side hustles at sea by any chance?
I didn't have any. I mean, I didn't even know about them until after I left. I shouldn't say I didn't know about any of them. I knew about some of them. I
Yeah.
knew how to get in-room dining food. I knew how to get alcohol, but that's about it. A lot of the things that go on at sea, I learned after I had left.
Like,
Oh, like the pollution, the dumping,
mm,
um, the amount of sexual harassment. I mean, I saw it, I knew it. I don't think I recognized it being young, to the degree that it is. I mean, there's prostitution rings. You talked about that with Smurf in one of your episodes.
mm, that,
Yeah, well, we talked about that a little bit, you and I, because I heard that clip, and it concerned me because I know that it's out there. I know that it happens,
yeah.
but there's also so much sexual harassment and rape that takes place on board. And we did in the crew bar, we did our own little surveys last year.
For the record, the crew bar is your Facebook page.
Right,
Right.
right.
So that is a group page for crew members, mostly former and
And former
current,
crew.
and they
Yeah.
basically it's like it's memes mostly, or
Yeah, we try to keep that one light, and there's a place to ask questions and whatnot. We're
yeah,
trying to move some of the questions and things over to something called cruise critics
yeah,
and try and streamline that a bit, because crew bar is always meant to be a little more light and funny with the memes and whatnot.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is a serious thing. And when I heard it, I mean, I having a rapport with you, I heard you say, great. And I heard it as great. Let's move on now from this. But I wanted to address it thinking, what if there were people out there hearing that as great, as in this was great? Because there's nothing that I thought was great about
No.
having these prostitution rings, or that it still potentially is happening. I don't know. I'm not on board anymore, but I would assume it is. And yeah, I know firsthand from doing some of my own research last year how much sexual assault and harassment takes place. I'm a victim of it from the ships myself. And I just wanted to make sure that that part of your podcast was that was addressed, I guess, in some way.
Well, I should say for the record that I was not condoning the actions of my former colleague, but that I was more than anything just completely surprised because I had no clue that any of it was going on. And I was saying,
Yeah, he
great.
threw out a lot of surprises at you. I listened to the whole episode, and he
Yeah,
did.
he really did. And I was saying great, as in, wow, like, you just keep surprising me. Great that you've got all these stories. And it wasn't meant, obviously, like, great, good job, well done on prostituting out on these women and stuff. Obviously not. When we worked on ships between the 6 years you worked and you finished in 2009, social media was in its infancy, and so were smartphones. And in the last decade plus, cruise lines have adapted and they've grown and they've learned and tried to kind of move with the times. And I'm sure you know this, but they employ their own personal vloggers at sea. It's their job to go on board and to vlog the lifestyle, or to,
Right.
showcase the experience in a positive light. And obviously, when you sign a contract of employment with any cruise ship company, a lot of the time there'll be a defamation clause, which is
Mm-hmm.
why it's sometimes difficult to get guests on this show, because if they're still working within the industry, they might
Exactly.
they might not be able to say anything, which is something I learned about in one of my
Yeah,
previous episodes.
unfortunately.
I had
It
to,
was a good episode. I
I
got to
was,
see pieces of it before it came down.
yeah, yeah. We'll try to do another one another time, and we'll have to keep company names out of it because that person is still very much involved with that in that company and has been almost exclusively for a long time. So we won't lean on that too much. But so what I was going to say, like what I'm trying to do is in a way something similar to what you're doing with cruise critics,
Mhm.
and that is giving people a platform or a chance to say what has happened to them. And obviously, if you're far removed from the industry, then you've got the chance to say it without fear of reprisals. If you're still
Mhm.
working in the industry and something happens, then you've got no chance of saying something if you intend to go back to working on board. But
I
it's
know.
but it's important, I think, for us to to say what's really going on, so that there's a bit more of
And
an informed decision.
yeah.
People know what's going on. I don't.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I'm kind of in the same position
Mm,
with the crew bar. We do our best to minimize any negative talk about the companies specifically. We've been contacted sometimes by the companies if something really negative is put out there, but they haven't necessarily told us to take it down. So
right.
there is that, maybe there is that free speech part. And then with cruise critics, hopefully developing a platform where, it's anonymous. We help them with the reviews so that if they write them in a way where, yes, it's anonymous, but they are making themselves very identifiable the way they write the review, we'll come back to them and suggest some edits, knowing that they're probably going to get in trouble for writing these reviews, and then tell them, you're likely going to be identified for writing this review. Do you still want to post it? But it's so sad to have to do that.
Of
Like,
course. Yeah.
why not be able to say what's going on and fix it, not because we want to trash these companies, not because we want to take down the cruise companies. It's why can't it just be a place to voice the concerns and try and make
Absolutely.
things better?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I don't want to be this whistleblower that's just all like negative. No, the bad pollution and all this, they need to change, they need to stop, and da 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 da. It's like, well, there's a lot of science and data to suggest that it's not all that great, right?
Yeah.
And they are trying to
Yeah.
do things about it. But on what you were just saying about leaving anonymous reviews and stuff, if there's anyone listening to this or even watching the clips or whatever, and they want to come on and talk to me and tell their story, they don't have to be on camera. They can use a pseudonym. You can use obviously a fake name. And if I have to, I'll even edit your voice to make you sound different. Put you in a lower register or a higher one, depending on your preference. I'm not really that fussed. But anyway, that's just a little mission statement from me that I want to hear people's experiences. But it's nice to hear funny stories, of course it is, but it's more important that we hear the truth and in an unbiased way.
I know that you ask everybody on the show about injuries. I hear you ask that question quite often. Do you have anybody who's talked about injuries that have sustained them for, life after leaving the cruise ship, or
I haven't.
anyone who
No one, no one so far. I mean, I don't think anyone's really. No, I'm sure you've spoken to a few, in your time.
Well, I have, but I mean, with you continuing these shows and asking that question, it might be good for you to get in touch with LipCon. I
Well,
told them I would mention them in the show.
Lipcon, did you say?
It's LipCon and Marquis and Associates, I believe.
Okay.
LipCon, Marquis and Associates, and they're maritime lawyers that
Yeah,
help with injuries. So anytime you're talking to someone with injuries on the show, you could drop them.
yeah. Okay. I hate to do this to you because it's a very sensitive subject, but I know you already kind of told me that it was no big deal in the end because you managed to get away with it. But you mentioned about the really awful subject of rape at sea. And I just wanted to hear a bit more about that before we move on to something more lighthearted. Something
Mm-hmm.
happened to yourself at sea. And obviously, in the episode with Rachel, she had mentioned about she'd been roofied. And that's not something that's a stranger to you either, as well, right?
No, so my situation was I was walked back to my room by a friend that, walked me back to my room every night for the last, I'd say, few weeks that I'd been on board. It was my first contract. And when we got back to my room, he handed me a water bottle and said to drink some water. Um, and I said, well, why? I haven't been drinking tonight. And he just kind of laughed and said, no, but drink water before bed. It's good for you. And so I took the water bottle up to my bed and didn't think much of it because we were quite good friends. And again, my first contract, uh, I woke up, and this is obviously some time later, and he was on top of me. My clothes were already off. I was able to push him off of me before I was raped, but I was assaulted. I was molested. And I found out, because he confessed, I found out that he had swiped my key card on the way out the door so that he could let himself back in later on. He'd roofied my water bottle. And later on, we found out that the doctor on board was getting these pills and providing them, selling them to people. And he was later caught for using one himself on an underage passenger. And that's how he was fired. And, that came to an end, at least. I won't say to an end, but that supply came to an end from that person. In any case, I mean, clearly, based on your other podcasts, there's lots of supply out there and people are being roofied constantly.
Yeah. Wow. So, how did you deal with this guy after the incident had occurred?
Um, so I had a friend that was a high-ranking officer, and I went to him first, and I tried to talk to him about what happened, and he told me that I would be fired if I went and escalated it any further. And he wasn't threatening me. He was a good friend to me, he still is. He was telling me that this is what he's seen every single time, that they don't want the he said, she said, that they will just terminate both people with no questions asked, and that if there was anything he could do to help, he would. But he just knew that that was ultimately what would be the end game. Um, so I really wanted to stay. It was my first contract, and I was trying to save money. So I ended up he was outside my cabin again one day, banging on my door, worried that I was going to tell. And
Mm.
so he was banging on the door, asking if he could talk to me. And he had his cell phone, and the phone rang, and it was his mom. And I grabbed the phone from him, and I told her what he had done. And she started defending him and saying that, he was such a good boy, and he never would do things like this, and please forgive him. And then after, I just, pushed the phone back at him and told him that if he didn't leave within a week, that I would go and escalate it, and that I would just take the termination. We could both go home. So he ended up not calling my bluff, and he left a week later.
Mm.
He left the cruise line. I don't know if he worked for a different company after that, and this is going back, 2004. So
Oh, 20 years ago. Yeah.
really, yeah.
Again, thank you, Krista, for sharing that story. I know it's a long time ago, but appreciate that it's never easy talking about these things and dredging up the past, whatever the capacity. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And
That's
to
okay.
think that, we're still having this conversation, that people are being reviewed on your show, that you're talking about it. And my experience was 20 years ago, but people are still having the same kind of experiences. That's crazy.
When you say they're still having these experiences, is that because you're hearing about it from people through your Facebook pages, the cruise
Yeah.
critics, and what's the other
Not
one?
so much cruise critics. Last year, we did a project called See Me, which was a not-for-profit foundation, and we ran a survey in the crew bar with how many people had been sexually harassed or assaulted.
This is the online Facebook community page,
Yeah,
the crew bar.
it's usually more fun and memes and usually lighthearted, but every so often, we try and get out there and get an understanding of what's happening,
Mm.
and draw awareness. And so, yeah, that's where I say it's still happening to men and women, because a lot of men reported in as well that they experience the same kind of behavior, same kind of, assaults. Um,
It
and
just
then
is, it's mind
your show,
blowing.
even on your show.
Yeah, but it's absolutely mind blowing that it's 2024 and only stuff now we feel like we're actually able to say because we've found a platform, we've found an ability to maybe figure out a workaround. And we're not blaming the companies for these things that have happened. We're letting them know that things have happened and that things need to get better. And obviously, as you said, the high-ranking officer, he said, look, if you go anywhere with this, they're going to get rid of you. They're going to get rid of him. That's what they do. They wash their hands of any drama because they don't want it to affect them. Because if the passengers hear about it, then they're not going to want to go and cruise with that line because they don't treat their staff very well. Well, guess what? It happens. And the fact that they are so eager to rinse their hands of anything traumatic or whatever might be happening is it's pretty shitty, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. The platforms that we try to put out there, like what you're doing and
Mm.
what we're doing with Cruise Critics, it's just like you said. It's not about trying to bring companies down or trash them. It's just they must have their own surveys and things that they do internally to get this feedback, but we know that the crew are not honestly giving them that feedback because they're scared. So they're just saying everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine.
Mm.
So they want these anonymous ways to be able to speak out. Why can't the cruise companies just hear those and say, yeah, we could make things better? So you've spoken to that. I've spoken to that. I think we both really wish we could make a bigger impact.
They one day at a time. What in your time at sea was one of the most standout, ludicrous, ridiculous questions or requests that you had from passengers?
Oh my gosh. There was these passengers that they wanted a picture window, and I'm looking at their room on the plan and I'm like, you have a picture window, and they keep arguing with me down at the dock that they don't have a picture window, and I'm down at the pier trying to, on embarkation day it's busy as hell and I'm down there. So I'm just like, okay, I don't know why they think they don't have a window, but I'm going to move them to another room with the picture window and just call it a day. So move them. They come back down and they start screaming at me again that they don't have this picture window. And so I go up with them and I'm like, that is the terminal building outside. And when the ship moves, you will not have that building move with us. Therefore, you'll be able to see out your picture window. It was just crazy that they they didn't think they had a view because the building was there.
Yeah.
And then the other ones
I have heard that one before. Ian actually told me that one. Ian Montalto.
Oh, did he?
He did, but it was worded differently. But confirmation that it happens a lot more than people realize. Fuck me, that's stupid. Go on, tell the other one.
The others were when Americans would come on, and sorry, I shouldn't just say Americans, but it typically happened with Americans trying to warm up burgers in the safe.
Yes, they thought it was a microwave.
Yeah.
In the cabin
for that not working.
Yeah, we should say that for the record, every cabin has its own personal safe inside the wardrobe, and it has a digitized keypad or whatever. You can punch the numbers in and access all your valuables. So,
and we should edit out that Americans were the ones asking. It's just all guests.
All guests, not just Americans. I mean, the British the British are known for asking a few stupid questions. Like I was doing bridge tours once, and we're up on the bridge looking out across the sea, and a guest asked me, just out of curiosity, how high are we above sea level? And I was like, we're at sea level.
Oh yeah,
we're on the sea. Like, what do you think? We were going to be like up in the Everest Alps because we're on the bridge looking over the sea. This is sea level. What are you talking about? We couldn't be more sea level if we tried. Oh God! Did you have any nicknames at sea?
Not that I know of.
Yeah,
maybe I'll find out after this show.
Yeah, they might get in touch in the comments. Well, what do you do now?
I work on board the ferries, so I still get to be at sea. I just get to come home every night, and I'm chief steward on board there, so I'm in charge of passenger safety and all of the food and beverage and customer service outlets that are on board. So it's kind of familiar to me, but it is nice that I come back at night.
That is literally like the trade-off, isn't it? You worked 6 years at sea, always away from home, from friends and family, and now you obviously have a daughter. You come back home every night. Well, you're going between, you said Vancouver and...
to Victoria. Yeah, I do that run.
That run is, so how long does that run take?
It takes a couple hours, so we go twice a day there and back, and then I finish my trip.
And you've been doing that for how long?
Just over a year.
Oh, right.
Before that, I was in hotel management.
Oh, that's right. So what was that during COVID? You've done the hotel management since you left the ships, and you've been doing obviously the ferries as well.
Bit of film and then the ferries. Yeah.
What's next?
What is next?
Who knows?
Definitely not going back to ships.
Maybe you could be the co-host of Deck Tales.
Maybe.
So yeah, if you are a crew member and you are looking for some funny memes to cash in on or check out and share with your friends at sea, go and check out the Crew Bar on Facebook. That's Krista and a couple of her former colleagues.
Yeah, I mean colleagues that I met through the Crew Bar.
Right. Oh, okay. So they're there to help people communicate the fun that does happen at sea, as well as some of the bad stuff. Krista, thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely talking to you and seeing you in the flesh for the first time, because we have spoken, but this is the first time we've actually met officially.
It is.
So thanks for coming on. I hope you had a bit of fun with it.
I did. Thank you so much. I'm losing my voice, so I'm ready to go and say goodbye now.
That's the perfect timing. We'll see you again soon, my dear. Thanks again.
All right. See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of Deck Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to subscribe, rate and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to navigate the podcasting waters and continue bringing you these fascinating stories. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials, because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your captain, Sammy Catlin. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on Deck Tales. Bon voyage.